But introducing our next speaker, I actually got to hear Hoansoo speak at the near office hours actually recently, and I was pretty certain he's going to do an amazing talk. So I'm very happy to invite him as a speaker. Please invite Hoansoo Lee from Exabits.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. Excuse me. So my name is Hoansoo. I'm one of the founders of Exabits. So I want to begin with a very well-known fact that especially the people here already know, that compute has just really exploded in the past, in the recent years. And with the complexity of AI models expected to double every 3 months, and this forecast really comes from the business leaders of AI, with the deep pockets to really build the large-scale language models, are observing that they've yet to see any diminishing marginal returns to scale. Okay, and then when you consider what's available in terms of supply, and consider all the major demand applications like AR, virtual reality, blockchain, IoT, and of course artificial intelligence, what we have available compared to what we need is nowhere near, and we just have a fraction. So there's this deep demand-supply imbalance. Okay. And then we've, of course, also seen NVIDIA sort of grow into stratospheric levels, right? It's gained more than $1.5 trillion in the past 2 years, and now it ranks as the 3rd largest company by market capitalization after Microsoft and Apple. And you will hear from many of the decentralized physical infrastructure projects make the case and pitching to ease this bottleneck, right? Either by proposing a decentralized infrastructure or working on technologies to make efficiency enhancements. Now at Exabits, we take a slightly different view, okay? So we believe that NVIDIA GPUs are incredible. Their applications and for training and inference are necessary and sufficient, and they're really here to stay for the foreseeable future. And so that we position ourselves along the value chain in the very upstream, sort of like the oil and gas producers in the energy sector. So we power the decentralized marketplaces like Akash that just presented before me. And for us, in the long run, our aspiration is to really become the liquidity providers of GPUs. So for us, a big trillion-dollar question is, how far and for how long is this compute dominance going to continue? So for perspectives, the peak public spending for the Apollo space programs and its related projects, so the last time there was a very large public expense for technological advancements, peaked at around 2.3% of US GDP, adjusted for inflation. Okay. And then the question of how much is compute poised to grow in relation to the US GDP, if you extrapolate the rate of its growth given current numbers, we think that it will surpass the benchmark US GDP forecast by 2027. Okay. So for those of us who have very bullish outlook on compute, think that compute is really poised to be the currency of the future. So let's consider that for a moment, okay? So Bitcoin was the original competition, the original competitor to go against US dollar, right? And this year, it's really been on the spotlight because there's been a really large rally in Bitcoin prices. Now, if you subscribe to the view that Bitcoin is sort of destined to become the digital gold in the future, okay, then you would say then there's roughly a 10x upside left. And that's just calculated by taking the ratio of market capitalization of gold by the market capitalization of Bitcoin. Okay. And now, once it reaches that price target, if it does reach it at all, the expected return on Bitcoin should be dramatically lower because gold is used as a hedge against business cycles. And you don't typically make a lot of money on insurance policies, right? Because insurance is there to make money when bad things happen. And comparing that against compute, well, compute, we have yet to reach artificial general intelligence. And it seems the demand as the fundamental value proposition of compute to the economy is changing and transitioning into accelerated compute. We think that this value is truly set to grow. So for all of us who are actively investing, you want to have exposure to NVIDIA, right? So in fact, this year, S&P 500, NASDAQ has been on a tear. But what you will see is if you look at everyone else except NVIDIA, the returns have been quite paltry, like barely keeping up with money market returns of 5%. That's because NVIDIA has just done so well. And of course, buying NVIDIA shares would be the natural point for you, natural way to get access to chip exposure. But of course, the price now has really gone up so much, you have to pay a very, very big premium, right? Because it's a public company. There's been so much enthusiasm around compute. And just as a sanity check, if you look at the oil and gas industry, buying into ExxonMobil will get you a much more precise exposure to oil because their price-to-book ratio is nowhere near the levels that we see in NVIDIA. So what's an alternative? Perhaps you can buy, or you can aspire to buy the GPUs outright, kind of like buying your own homes, right? But at $40,000 a chip, $300,000 for an 8 H100 server, and with a minimum viable cluster of about $45 million, this is a very capital-intensive proposition, as Greg just before me mentioned. And what many people don't realize, but we know this very well because we're in this business, that there's an incredible scarcity of large-scale data centers that can properly house these GPUs with enough reliability and power to support these chips. But even after you acquire the bare metal and have the chips in hand, operating them is not straightforward. So the installation cost of network interface cards and the switch modules alone can be up to 40% of the actual GPU capital expenditure. And the technology stack includes parallel computational driver and communication layers that all have to work together to complete the operation. So at Exabits, we have traditional Web 2 AI companies, decentralized compute providers, and DeepIn projects as our customers, using the GPUs that are financed by individual investors via tokenization. Our tokenomics centers around providing the compute pool funded by node investors. We tokenize the GPUs to lower the barrier to entry for individual investors so that everyone can participate in the value accretion of compute. And our compute pool can either serve Web 2 AI customers directly or lease compute out to subnets whose allocation to compute is proportional to the number of tokens they stake into the ecosystem. And the subnets for us is used primarily as a distribution channel and the entry point for individuals to participate. And they consume compute by either using the AI, using the compute to develop AI applications their own, in which case they would be the end users, or resell compute to other direct AI customers, or use it to mine native tokens from IONET, Aether, BitTensor, EMC, Akash, Aleo. So the fundamentally advantageous value proposition of GPUs as a financial vehicle is that it's a cash flowing asset, okay? And that's something that you don't hear very often from technology companies because tech companies are not typically like that. You make your money on capital gains, not on cash flow. But GPUs are really like your homes. You can rent them out and you can make money on it. And there are many of these decentralized marketplaces that are predicated on that business model. And so here are just some basic numbers that we run using the marketplace real on-demand data for how these are priced. And so for a single GPU, And this is for an NVIDIA H100 SuperPod, which has 1,024 chips, okay? So single GPU would generate somewhere between $22,000 to $30,000 a year in just rental revenue, okay? And if you run the CapEx and the OpEx numbers, we're estimating somewhere between 25 to 45% annualized yield rate, unlevered, okay? So if you hear numbers like that in like real estate, private equity funds, that's because they take on a ton of debt. But this is not using any financial leverage. So unlevered basis, plus the upside of mining any native tokens at market value for any idle compute that's not used, that's not consumed for AI training. Sorry. More details, but they should have been skipped. Our business is trusted by many of these large, both traditional and Web 3.0 brands that you see here on the screen. We have over 65,000 H100 chips in our network that are distributed across North America, Europe. And just as you heard Greg speak, having access to chips at this scale is incredibly rare. And that's been one of our key advantages in being able to get and onboard a lot of these large brand customers.
First, enter your email and password on the login page to sign in. Upon successful login, you will be directed to the dashboard where you can see an overview of all available features. Click on View All Virtual Machines. Click on the Key Pair menu to create or upload a new key. Click on Virtual Machines to return to the Virtual Machines page where you can deploy a new virtual machine. Follow the prompts to enter the parameters and information for the new virtual machine, including the GPU resources required. Click the Deploy button, and you will see the new virtual machine in the creating state. It will take approximately 1 to 2 minutes to complete the creation process. During this wait, we can explore other features of the platform. Okay, let's return to the virtual machines page. You can see that the newly created GPU server has changed to the active state and is now accessible and usable. Clicking on the name will take you directly to the machine's details page where you can view and configure various parameters of the machine. Once the parameters are configured, you can remotely access the GPU server via SSH. You can see that we have successfully accessed the GPU server and obtained its information. Now, we can also install the required environments and software directly on this machine. Everything is running smoothly. Now, let's return to the GPU server details page to check the running status and operation records of this machine again. Thank you, everyone.
We actually just put that together a few hours ago, so I'm glad, I'm very thankful to the organizers for accommodating us. We went live just in September last year, and our growth in terms of revenue, now we're at $300,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I think numbers probably higher now. That was back in April. But that's been a compound quarterly growth rate of 300%. So very much close in line with the AI compute providers that have had similar incredible growth. Our team actually comes from a very traditional background. So I worked in Obama's White House during his first administration when the financial crisis happened. And I remember back then, Congress was being shy about asking for $800 billion for troubled asset relief program. And now that just seems cute because everything's now in trillions. And my partner, Zach, used to be one of my students when I was a professor in Beijing. One of the most brilliant guys, has worked for many years for Ericsson. And so we started our company back in 2022, so before ChatGPT was unveiled. But we sort of had this view that AI basically can be reduced into 3 different components. One, the model, the math. 2, the data. And 3, compute. And it was always our bet that the compute was going to be the scarce asset that was really going to be in demand. And that bet has just done us very well on kind of preparing and securing the large network of GPUs and recruiting executives like Xander, who used to be at Bitmain and has very deep connections to the distribution channels at NVIDIA. So please follow us on our journey at exabits.ai. We're on Twitter, Telegram, and everywhere else on social media. Thank you.